Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Temple Beth Emet Outreach Seder. In it, we will perform the essence of the Seder and talk along the way. And there are some new things for this year that I want to share very much with you. For once again, this has been an interesting year and a time for us to be thinking. So the best way to begin, as we do with all Jewish ceremonies, is we begin with the Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'am v'romemanu lekol lashon v'kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'ahava moadim l'simcha chagim uzmanim l'sason et yom hachag hamatzot hazeh זמן חירותנו, מקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כיוונו בחרת, אותנו קידשת, מכל העמים. ומועדי קדשך, בשמחה וצצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש ישראל והזמנים. Excuse me, I made a mistake. We're supposed to say Shechianu before I drink. So you'll excuse my mistake and let us say Shechianu together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higyanu la'zman hazeh. And to make up for my mistake, I get to drink again.
Amen.
Now, the next thing is I have to wash my hands. Now, please pay attention. I am washing my hands. Boot out the blessing. Now, let me tell you the truth. We will wash our hands with a blessing before we eat. Now, people say that means that we just wanted to wash away the outside world as we begin our Seder. And it's a wonderful concept. But one of my professors taught it a different way. People get fed. They work a hard day, and the Seder is long, and they're hungry, and they're tired. Well, in the ancient world, they understood that maybe a little bit better than we do. Why? Because washing the hands the first time, then they said the blessing, people ate. And you know what happened to the rest of the Seder? Forget it. They just wanted to talk and be together, and as it says, Zman cherutenu, be free. So that's why we don't say a blessing here, but we still wash the hands. But now, I have a blessing to do. I pick up the parsley, I dip it in the salt water, and I say the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri ha'adamah. What most of you don't realize, if you remember the first Passover Seder, the lamb was slaughtered, the blood was painted on the doorposts. How? With a plant called hyssop. Hyssop is frankly like parsley on steroids. So when we dip in the salt water, we are really taking ourselves back spiritually to painting the doorpost with the blood to protect ourselves. And the bitterness is that to remember that this is in the context of when we were slaves. Now, Halachman yad yachalu avatana be'ar Mitzrayim. Kodik v'in yetei v'yechak. Kod yitzri yetei v'yisach. Hashata hacha. L'shana haba b'nei chorin. Hashata ine l'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. This is the bread of affliction that our forefathers ate in the land of Egypt. Let all who are hungry come in and eat. Let all who are needy come and partake of the Paschal Lamb. This year we are here. Next year we will be in the land of Israel. This year we are slaves. Next year we will be B'nei Chorim. We will be free. I take the middle matzah and I break it in half. And I hide it. Now, Most of you at your Seders, the children will have to find it. The adults will hide it. In the days of the Mishnah, the early part of the Talmud, the children hid it and they made the parents look for it. And once again, this is a technique, I believe, to keep the children involved. Now we know what they do because they watch where the matzah goes like crazy. We've had community Seders and we pass it around and we have a lot of fun with it, but we can see the kids are watching. In the older days, it made the kids had to think where to hide it and plan and plot. And then, of course, it's not so bad to act like a kid at a Seder. So that's what happens. So that's that. Now, the first song that we're going to do together is from the 4 questions. So I turn over to Robin to lead us in the Banishtana.
Manishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot mikol halelot halayla hazeh mikol halelot halayla hazeh mikol halelot shebchol halelot anu ochlim Chametz umatzah, halayla hazeh, kulo matzah, halayla hazeh, kulo matzah, shebchol halelot, anu ochlim she'ayirakot. Halayla hazeh, maror, maror. Halayla hazeh, maror, maror. Shebchol elot ein anu matilim, afilu ha'am echad, Halayla hazeh, shetei pe'amim. Halayla hazeh, shetei pe'amim. Shebchol halelot, anu ochlim, ben yoshvinu ben misubim, ben yorfinu ben misubim. Halayla hazeh, kolanu misubim. Halayla hazeh, kolanu misubim.
The 4 questions. How have we changed this night from all other nights? Obviously, on all other nights, we eat bread or matzah. On this night, we don't eat matzah. On the other nights, we eat bitter herbs tonight. We don't make a big deal. Although, knowing Jewish mothers, there's always salad around, But still, the idea is that we make it a point. And the other one, why on all other nights don't we dip? Most people don't like to dip stuff into salt. But we do. We dipped it once with the parsley. And we're going to dip later when we have the food of the meal. We dip it twice to remember that our lives were bitter and that we perspired and that the Egyptians made us cry. So we think now of all people who have cried, all things in slavery. The Passover Haggadah is not just about the outgoing from Egypt. I'll talk about that in a minute. And last but not least, it's usually translated on all the nights we sit up straight, but this night we recline. I like misubin to mean get up and around. See, use the Passover Seder as a time to get reacquainted, especially being that the pandemic, maybe not this Passover, but certainly next Passover. Use the time to catch up. Yes, do what you have to do for the Seder. Please, the Haggadah is a beautiful, beautiful document. But spend extra time getting to know each other, that you haven't seen them, in this case, maybe 2 years. So once again, the 4 questions. Now, the answer is, Avadim Hayinu. We were slaves unto Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord took us out with an outstretched arm. So I'm going to call upon Robin again to lead us in the song Avadim Hayinu. We were slaves, we are now free people.
Avadim hayinu, hayinu, atah b'nei chorim, b'nei chorim. Avadim Hayinu Ata V'necholim Avadim Hayinu Ata V'necholim Avadim Hayinu Ata V'necholim Avadim Hayinu Ata V'necholim Avadim Hayinu Ata V'necholim.
The passage, Avadim Chayinu in the Haggadah, ends with one wonderful sentence, and I use that for everyone. It says, the more one tells about the outgoing from Egypt, about leaving slavery, the more one is to be praised. At your Seders, please, have people tell. Have people share what it means to leave slavery. Have them tell the story. Or if they just want to interpret going out of Egypt, if they have a kernel that they've learned of historiography. But once again, the more, it's in line with what Hillel said about Hanukkah, You always increase holiness, you never decrease holiness. The retelling of the outgoing from Egypt is a holy, holy story. The more you talk about it, the more you ought to be praised. So that brings us to the first characterization we have of the four sons. Well, I apologize. It's called the four sons, but this is 2021 or 5781. When the song was written, I gave it away. We're going to sing a song to this. When the song was written in 1968, they left it as four sons. But truthfully, and I take full responsibility, it is now 52 years later. The Jewish world has changed. So now it's not four sons, it's two sons and two daughters. So the song is to the tune of Clementine. Please join us, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the four sons. But let's have another song, shall we?
Said the father to his children, at the Seder you will dine. You will eat your fill of matzah, you will drink 4 cups of wine. Now this father had 2 daughters, and his sons they numbered twine. One was wise and one was wicked, one was simple and a bore, and the fourth was sweet and winsome. She was young and she was small. While her siblings asked the questions, she could scarcely speak at all. Said the wise one to his father, would you please explain the laws of the customs of the Seder? Will you please explain the cause? And the father proudly answered, as our fathers ate in speed, ate the Paschal lamb at midnight, and from slavery we were free. So we follow their example, and their midnight must complete. All the Seder, and we should not after 12 remain to eat. They sneered us and so wicked, what does all this mean to you? And the father's voice was bitter as his grief and anger grew. If you know you don't consider as a son of Israel, then for you this has no meaning. You could be a slave as well. Then the simple son said simply, what is this? And quietly the good father told his offspring, we were free from slavery. But the youngest one was silent, for she could not ask at all. Her bright eyes were bright with wonder as the father told them all. My dear children, heed the lesson and remember evermore what the father told his children, told the kinder number 4.
The 4 sons. As you heard, one was wise. Wicked is a harsh word, but it goes to the point. The people feel that not wanting to be part of us, to us, is a terrible sin. So the father reacts angrily. The simple son, you just point to it, the smells. I mean, all of us have remembrance of our childhood, the aromas of a kitchen getting ready for Passover. And the baby, you just point to it. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, though, made a point a long time ago. There's actually a 5th child. That child is the one who doesn't come, who doesn't bother showing up for the Seder. And that is lost to us. So please, if you have children who sneer, who don't find this a part of their life, instead of angrily telling them their teeth should be blunted, which is what the actual Hebrew says, send them to me. Let us talk about the beauty of Judaism. Let us talk together about coming from slavery to freedom is. Yes, I will tell them the details, that's part of it. But I also remind them of the smells, the aromas, and the work that went into it. So once again, that is what you do. Also, Passover is not just retelling of Egypt. That's the major thing. But there are sections of the Passover Seder that talk about other times we've been enslaved. By the Romans, the tale of the 5 rabbis speaking all night, relating to the outcome from Egypt. It's really not true. Now, they may have talked about Egypt to a point, but really there were 4 rabbis and Bar Chachba. That is the leader of the rebellion against the Romans. And the reason they didn't know it was time to go to morning services is they were in a room without windows and without doors. So they didn't see the sun come up. They didn't have watches in those days. But they had sundials, but it's the same problem. So what was going on? They were plotting the overthrow of Rome. They were plotting what was successful for 3 years. Jewish sovereignty was returned to the land. And unfortunately, it would end in 135 of the Common Era and not come again until 1948. So you have basically 1960 years. But now we have our land, but we must never forget that people sought to enslave us and to wipe us out. And one of the things is we're still here, and those Romans are not. One thing to remember. Now, but back to the major story of Passover, and that is the 10 plagues. Let me find my 10 plague page. Well, anyway, let us take a look at our glass of wine. And I apologize. Well, here we go. Sorry about that. Now, the 10 plagues. Now, we are taught that we are to pour out, using our pinky, that because our joy cannot be complete, though the innocent Egyptians were killed because Pharaoh, his heart was hardened. That is true, and there's one interpretation, but I like the other interpretation my teachers taught me. You see, when you dip your pinky, of all the fingers of your hand, God forbid, but the only one you can live without is your pinky. The other 4 you need. So by taking your pinky and putting it in your glass, you're telling the Romans, which is when the Seder was done, that the wine doesn't control me, I control the wine. Sort of like this. So, if you will, I'm going to say the Hebrew, and then we will repeat with the English, shall we? Dam, and you can repeat after me. Dam, Svardeya, Kinim, Erov, Dever, Shechin, Barad, Arbe, Choshech, Makat HaBekorot. And in English. And let's do it twice. Once again, increasing holiness. Blood, frogs, lice, beasts, cattle plague, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, slaying of the firstborn. Okay? And one thing in old Yiddish interpretation, because of how you're using that, well, you don't lick your finger afterward. It's considered to be really, in no pun intended, but in poor taste. Now, God brought us out of the land of Egypt. That would have been enough of us. If God let us be free from the Egyptians, that would have been enough for us. But instead, God gave us the Torah. That would have been enough for us. And in the Torah was specifically Shabbat, a day of rest, which we've talked about in Friday night services. That would have been enough for us. The song Dayenu, enough for us. Once again, Robin is going to lead us into Dayenu.
Ilu Hotzianu, Hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, Hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu, 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 Ilu Natan Natan Lanu, Natan Lanu, Et HaShabbat Natan Lanu, Et HaShabbat Dayenu, 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 Ilu Natan Natan Lanu, Natan Lanu, Et HaTorah Natan Lanu, Et HaTorah Dayenu, 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 Dayenu,
Very often, people come to me and they tell me they're not good Jews. Why not good Jews? Well, I don't do every commandment. Oh. So let me let you in on a hint. I love the Haggadah. I love it. And it's just wonderful. But sometimes people don't have time to do the entire Haggadah. So Rabbi Gamliel, one of the great leaders of the Talmud, said, you haven't done enough if, I know what you're all thinking, oh my God, Rabbi's going to tell us you have to do every page. No. If you don't talk about Pesach, the Paschal lamb, the sacrificial lamb, the matzah, the unleavened bread, and the maror, the bitter herb. So now I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to add a few extra things. But that's the basics. So the basic is, what is the Paschal lamb? Now, let me let you in on a secret of Judaism. When you're caught in a bind and you can't come up with a shank bone, which is what usually it is, chicken neck will work. Chicken neck will work. Once again, the rabbis understood that sometimes, in my case, they ran out of lamb at the kosher supermarket. So I didn't have it. So I figured I would do a chicken neck. But I was explaining to you, there is flexibility here. What is the Paschal lamb? Once again, the night of Passover, we have a dinner. Moses commands the people to get the lamb, to roast it, to have it for your family. And if your family is small, share it with another family. Community, being together. And then put the blood of the lamb on the doorposts. Why? So God would pass over. Let me let you in on a secret. Do you really think God didn't know where we were? Of course God did. But Moses didn't. And Aaron didn't. And they didn't want to take any chances of leaving anybody behind. We're the people who believe in the concept of we, meaning we don't leave anybody behind. So sure enough, they took the blood, which when it dries turns brown or black. The houses in Egypt in those days, and even today to a point, are white because it reflects the heat. What better color to use when you need your torches to find people? Because we leave at midnight. They needed to see it. So that's the concept of the Paschal lamb. And it continues. And on the Seder plate, that is that part. That is all reminds us of that sacrificial, which we became free only when we were all together and worked together and left together. If you have a chance, I don't know if it's showing it this weekend, but if the movie The Ten Commandments comes in, that scene about leaving Egypt is phenomenal. And it's true. Cecil B. DeMille did his research, let me tell you. So now, the matzah, the unleavened bread, it's flat. Why? Because anybody who's ever been a baker knows if you make lots of noise, the oven, it flattens. And that's what happens. Also, there's another point to this. This is the time we think about when we were slaves. And we're taught, what does it mean to be free? Well, freedom, true freedom, doesn't have any room for arrogance. And we shouldn't be arrogant because we know how we suffered. Well, the difference between, let's be honest, the difference between bread and matzah is hot air, right, when it's baked. So that's why. So when you're doing Passover and you're thinking about what happened to us and how we became free, leave the hot air out. And let's do this. Also, though, it's a throwback to the days of the Torah. We have the priests, is one level, the priest's assistants, the Levites that I broke the thing from, and the common people, the Israelites. This is one of the few times that we make a specific effort, other than Torah readings, in the traditional sense, when we differentiate between Kohanim, Levites, and Israel. The third one, maror, the bitter herb. Now, in the Ashkenaz tradition, we use horseradish. If you're really strong, we call it white lightning. That's the uncut horseradish. Most people use the purple. They use beet juice to cut it. But that's it. Why? Because the Egyptians embittered our lives. They made our lives bitter. Hard work, hard labor, and also treating us as if we had no value. Those are the three. But while I'm looking at the Passover plate, this is chazeret, lettuce. In the Sephardic world, they don't use horseradish. They use romaine lettuce as their bitter herb. So, but lettuce, springtime, all major Jewish festivals, Passover, Sukkot, Shavuot, all have a harvest festival attached to them. And that's why. So there's the harvest part. The other part, I told you, is parsley, which is basically hyssop. When we use the parsley, we're reminded of, once again, the blood on the doorpost. The haroset looks like the mortar of the bricks that was used to put together, if not the pyramids, certainly the great palaces. And the other one is, I told you, is the white lightning, is the horseradish. Now this is the egg, the hard-boiled egg. This is the egg. It is reminiscent of the everyday sacrifice in the afternoon. And that's why it's burnt. But there's something very interesting about eggs, especially hard-boiled eggs. Hard-boiled eggs are us. We're all hard-boiled eggs. What does that mean? Well, think about it. Under stress, under pressure, under heat, things melt, things warp, things get destroyed. Except eggs. Under stress, eggs become stronger. That's the timelessness of this. The slavery in Egypt didn't make us weaker. If anything, it made us stronger. And once we became free, we traveled. And other times in our history, when oppressors have sought to weaken us through giving us stress, we've become stronger. Now, there are two other items on the Passover plate. This one, the orange. It is a reaction to a negativity. Once again, when we did the ballot of the 4 children, I frankly added the women, because it's the girls, because it's the right thing to do. Someone had the audacity to say a woman leading a Seder has about as much place in Passover as an orange. Well, there's my orange. That's how I feel about Jewish women. Time has come for Jewish women to take their rightful place alongside Jewish men in Judaism, not only in Passover, but in everything. And next to it, well, we'll talk about it a little bit more with the Messiah when we do Eliyahu Hanavi. That's a jar of olives. Olives are a fruit that is endemic to the Middle East. That is our hope for peace in the Middle East, between ourselves and our neighbors. That's our hope, ourselves and the Palestinians. So those two things I added, because I feel the time has come to add things to our Seder plate as the world has changed. Now, we continue to the part that most of you have been looking forward to. My washing my hands the second time. Why? Because they want Rabbi to have clean hands? No. And this is part of the pandemic. But because it means the food is coming soon. So if you will allow me to. I will step over here. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim. Now that I've washed my hands with a blessing, I can eat. The first thing that I eat is matzah. So, now in Judaism, you always do the general first and then the specific. So being matzah is, frankly, a thing of bread. We do the bread blessing first. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Oh, almost forgot. Now we do the specific. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. Now, we take the matzah and we put the bitter herb on it. Being I am Ashkenaz, I'm going to use the haroset. And I dip that into the maror, and I dip it into the haroset. Hold on. Things didn't quite work out the way I had planned, but thinking about the outgoing from Egypt, things didn't work out quite how they had planned either. So let us pray again on the maror. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al achilat maror. Now remember, we tucked the maror into the charoset, teaching us that slavery was bitter, but now we are free people, and freedom is sweet. No matter how old it is, the maror never loses its kick. Now, forgive me. If you are going to eat now, if you've been following this along as your Seder, as your Seder, and you're going to eat now, stop the YouTube and go have dinner. Okay? And then I'm going to put this away for a minute. We have one more thing to do. And we're going to ask Olivia, and thank you again, Olivia is our TA, is our tech. And I'm going to ask Olivia and Robin to come with me. And I'm going to go. Now it's however long it takes you to have dinner and be finished with your meal. Come. No, I want you to I love you, but I need you to let in Elijah the prophet, and then we're going to sing to Elijah, and then I'll talk about it afterward. Okay? Elijah the prophet is our hope for the coming of the Messiah. A time when there will be no war, when there will be peace. And a time when we can all be together. And let us sing to Elijah the prophet. Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Hanavi, Eliyahu, Hatishvi, Eliyahu, 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 Hagiladi, Bimhera, our wish for us, for you, excuse me, our wish for all of you, from us, from Olivia, from Robin, and from myself, is Vashana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. May we all be in Jerusalem, however you want to perceive of Jerusalem, the physical Jerusalem, God willing, or the spiritual Jerusalem, a time of peace, a time of olive trees, where we will sit down with our neighbors. So once again, Robin, shall we? Vashana.
Vashana Haba'a
B'Yerushalayim, Vashana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim. Good evening, everybody. Chag Sameach, a very happy, happy Passover. From Temple Beth Emet of Burbank.
And Lishana Haba,